For more than 10 years, Marvin Winans has moved millions through both his sermons and music. Yet, there's one part of his life he's never openly discussed: his wife. And now, in a surprising revelation, she's stepping forward to explain why Marvin chose to keep her out of the public eye. What she discloses may make you question everything you believed about gospel royalty. When the conversation turns to gospel icons, Bishop Marvin Winans is a name that instantly commands attention. As a founding member of the legendary Winans family, he's played a central role in both gospel music and church leadership for decades, earning multiple stellar awards, Grammy nods, and maintaining ties with high-profile figures in politics and entertainment. You'd think everything about his life is out in the open. But here's the catch: his wife has never been seen. Unlike many other gospel figures in the public eye, Marvin has remained exceptionally guarded when it comes to his private life, particularly his marriage. Over time, fans have wondered, speculated, and even questioned whether he was married at all.
Now, for the very first time, the woman Marvin Winans kept away from the limelight is breaking her silence, and her words go far beyond the personal. What she reveals touches on themes of control, vulnerability, protection, and yes, even fear. In this video, we'll dig deep into the enigma of Marvin Winans' concealed marriage, examining why he chose to shield his wife from public view and the media spotlight. What she shares about their relationship, the toll it took on her mental health, ministry, and sense of self, and what this says about the tension between fame, faith, and power in the gospel industry. It's time to uncover the hidden truth and bring this silence to light. Marvin Winans is far more than just a gospel performer. He's gospel royalty. Born into the iconic Winans dynasty, Marvin played a pivotal role in shaping contemporary gospel alongside his siblings. As one of the original members of the group, he delivered soul-stirring messages through timeless hits like Tomorrow and Ain't No Need to Worry. His voice has carried ministry across continents, filling churches, concert halls, and even appearing at presidential functions. In fact, President Obama personally invited Marvin Winans to give the eulogy at Whitney Houston's funeral, a testament to the deep respect he holds. But despite more than 4 decades in the public arena, one striking absence remains in nearly every biography, interview, or major appearance: his wife. Not only has she been virtually invisible in public life, her name isn't even commonly known among his most devoted fans.
Unlike many gospel leaders whose spouses are co-pastors, fellow performers, or recognizable public figures, Marvin Winans' wife remained completely unseen. For a long while, people simply attributed it to a desire for privacy. After all, not everyone seeks the spotlight, right? But over the years, fans began noticing how deliberate her absence actually seemed. Marvin's church, the Perfecting Church, based in Detroit, experienced rapid growth, expanding with satellite campuses and drawing thousands of followers. Yet, there was never a First Lady seen heading women's ministries or speaking at church gatherings. Congregants whispered, others speculated, was he single? Was he divorced? Or was something being hidden? It wasn't just curious fans. Even within the gospel community, fellow pastors and artists quietly wondered why Marvin Winans, a man whose ministry so strongly emphasized family, never shared that aspect of his own life. But this next part may truly catch you off guard. While Marvin's public life was overflowing with awards, admiration, and the power of gospel music behind the scenes, his wife was living in a very different world.
For years, she stood in quiet support as her husband ascended in fame, laying aside her own ambitions, desires, and even her personal identity. Hers was a life of submission, not out of personal conviction, but because she was told it was the price to pay for being a pastor's wife. In her own words, she faded into a shadow beneath the shadow of Marvin's public life. What began as a union built on love and shared respect slowly transformed into what she describes as a cage made of expectations. Despite being married to a man who preached about love, family, and unity, Marvin's wife began to feel increasingly invisible and unheard. Her place within his ministry became that of an unacknowledged, silent presence. She was never given the chance to speak in public. She wasn't allowed to appear at events where media or cameras were present. She stayed entirely out of the public's view. And as the years passed, she began to question her value, not only as a wife, but as a woman. Her feelings became a mix of bitterness and bewilderment. On one hand, she understood Marvin's desire to maintain privacy. Fame, after all, brings with it exposure. and Marvin was known to be protective of his family. But in time, she began to feel like more than just a hidden partner. She was his wife. And yet, she felt her very sense of self was fading away. Whenever she voiced her concerns, asking Marvin why she couldn't be more involved in his ministry, or why she always had to remain in the background,
his response never changed. He always said, "This isn't about us, it's about the calling." But as the years went by, she began to feel as though her own calling was being buried beneath the weight of his fame. She was expected to stay quiet not only to preserve their marriage, but to maintain the image of the ministry they had worked so hard to build together. The pressure didn't come solely from Marvin. It also came from the church and the broader community. There was an unspoken rule that she would set aside her own voice, becoming invisible to uphold the illusion of perfection. And then came the loneliness. Marvin's wife wasn't just left out of the spotlight, she was excluded from their personal lives as well. Social gatherings, celebrity events, even family vacations, she was left behind. And whenever she questioned it, the answer was always the same. Their public life was too demanding, and including her in their private moments would somehow compromise the polished image of the Winans brand. But here's where the story takes a more troubling turn. What happened next became the catalyst for her decision to finally speak out.
In a painful moment of reckoning, Marvin's wife finally cracked under the unbearable weight of the isolation. Church leaders told her she wasn't needed, that her presence was a distraction from Marvin's divine mission. She was even asked to withdraw from participating in ministry functions. Her role, they said, was simply to support him quietly from the background. And then came the most painful realization. Marvin wasn't just going along with this narrative. He was actively reinforcing it. With a firmness that stung deeply, he never once stood up for her. She felt discarded, like an afterthought, a ghost within the very marriage she once believed was built on partnership. One cold, silent night, she finally hit her limit. After years spent hiding in the shadows of her husband's ministry, after years of suppressing her own feelings and pretending everything was fine, she couldn't go on pretending. It wasn't just the fact that she'd been invisible to the public, it was that she felt invisible to her own husband. The moment that broke her came when Marvin shared a news story with her. It wasn't about his career, and it wasn't about their family. It was about another gospel artist's wife, a woman who had stepped boldly into the spotlight. She was featured on television, leading events, openly sharing her voice in their ministry.
The contrast was too stark to ignore. And in that moment, Marvin's wife felt something sharp inside, not jealousy, not bitterness, but a quiet, painful realization. She had been sidelined for far too long. She had stood by Marvin through every season, the tours, the sermons, the triumphs and trials. She had put her own dreams on pause to help him build the legacy he stood on today. And yet, there was nothing, no platform, no recognition, no place for her. That night, she confronted him. This wasn't one of their usual subdued talks. This time, it was raw, emotional, and deeply real. For the first time, she demanded answers. Why am I always the one who stays behind? Why do I never get to share in the success we built together? She asked the man she had once leaned on, the one who preached about family, unity, and love, and he had no answer to give. Instead, he dodged. He told her, "That's just how it's always been." He insisted their focus had always been on the calling, on the ministry, that if the spotlight turned to her, it would distract from the mission they were serving. "It's for the greater good," he said. But that night, as she looked into his eyes, she saw something had shifted. Deep down, she knew something between them had broken.